Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. This is the daily update of the Ukrainian front. The Russians returned from their fishing trip that they always take during weekends. Therefore, we have an article from Sputnik with an update. So I will be able to provide both sides, both version of events, one from Sputnik, the other one from Ukrainska Pravda. Ukrainska Pravda comes as a narrative, as always. The Russians, which I like that format as well, comes as a map, and I like that version because, or that format, because it completes the narrative of the Ukrainians. So this is the Russian kind of update with all these bullets representing different activities. Blue bullets is the Ukrainians shelling the Russian positions. The red bullets is the Russians shelling the Ukrainian positions. The black bullets is supposedly where the troops meet and have a drink. And then on the yellow bullets here, these are where the Russians are destroying or downing a drone or a helicopter or an airplane. This is the Ukrainian version. As I said, as a narrative. I worked on this article earlier today when I provided an update of the 3 settlements where the Russians advance, and they missed Kupiansk, these guys in their update. So they have in Kupiansk, and then they have they talk about the Russians advancing here on this article right here on 3 fronts, on 3 settlements. The 3 settlements are located, one in Bakhmut area, which is right here in the middle, Donetsk area, Luhansk, Donetsk, and then 2 here by Marinka area. But the Ukrainians left out the Kupiansk front, which is, I think, even worse than the other 2. And I made the video on this article plus the Kupiansk advancement. So now I'm gonna provide you with the update from the Ukrainians, starting from the north, then northeast, then east, then southeast, and south. So let's go to the Ukrainians and see what they say. So Russians advance near 3 settlements, I covered that. And we have here the Russians are advancing near Klishkivka, Marinka, and Novomikhailivka. This is the ones that I said by Marinka and by Bakhmut. In Donetsk Oblast, while the armed forces of Ukraine continue to advance on the Melitopol front and consolidate their positions. Now, the Ukrainians supposedly, they have their counteroffensive here. In this area, this is Zaporozhye Oblast. They try to cut through here and divide them, break the Russians in 2. And why they say Melitopol, this is the town of Melitopol, and this is Berdyansk. So they try to cut here, this area, so they, gonna take care of these guys later, supposedly. During the day, the occupiers launched, the occupiers being the Russians, 2 missiles and more than 30 airstrikes, fired 35 times from MLRSs at the positions of our troops and populated areas. More than 20 combat clashes took place over the day. Let's do this, and then I will go to the map. Over the course of the day, the Air Force of Ukraine's defense forces carried out 6 strikes on areas of concentration of occupiers' personnel. Ukraine's rocket forces and artillery struck 4 Russian control points, 1 area of concentration of personnel, weapons and military equipment, and 3 artillery systems at firing positions over the course of the day. Remember, no attack on any civilians, no villages, nothing destroyed. When I'm going to read you from those blue bullets, you're going to see that, according to the Russians, the Ukrainians hit a lot of civilians, or at least populated area. Now, the operational situation on the Volyn and Polisia fronts remain unchanged. Those are in the north by, I'm going to show you the map, by Belarus. They say nothing changed over there. 1, 2, 3, PPP. Here it is in the north, right here. And then they're going to go Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv Oblast. On the Sivershchinya and Slobozhanchinya fronts, the Russians carried out mortar and artillery bombardments of more than 20 settlements. So they say that in this region right here, the Russians used artillery and bombardments. The Russians says nothing on the Western Front, just the Ukrainians bombarding. Let's pick this one. Let's see what's right here, for instance. So this governor of Belgorod said that Ukrainian forces fired 3 mortar shells at the border checkpoint. There were no casualties or damage. Here, again, it says 3 artillery shells at the village. There were no casualties or damage. So, according to the Russians, the Ukrainians are bombarding or shelling the Russians on the other side of the border. Now, let's go back to the Ukrainians. We go to on the Kupiansk front. Kupiansk front is right here. So it's right in the most far east side of Ukraine, right here. When I think the Russians have most success. So let's see what the Russians say here, because they said in Sinkovka the Russians advanced and the Ukrainians fled, leaving it undefended. Battle Group Zapad successfully repelled all attacks by Ukrainian troops using air and artillery strikes. And the Ukrainians say, on the Kupiansk front, the settlements of Dvorchnya, Sinkivka, Kislivka, and Berostove in Kharkiv Oblast came under artillery and mortar bombardment. So let's see if we see something like that. Dvorchnya is right here. That they talked about, and that's all I can identify. Sometimes this the Russians have different names than the Ukrainians for the same settlements. For instance, I will use Bakhmut, which is right here. They call it Artemovsk. The Russians call it Artemovsk. These guys call it Bakhmut. Very close, right? No. So now they're going to go down from Kupiansk. They're going to go south to Liman area, this area where the Russians again supposedly advanced. Let's see what happened here in the Kharkiv-Kupiansk area. Russian forces destroyed a field ammunition depot of Ukraine's 103rd Territorial Defense Brigade. They downed a drone, and here Battle Group Zapad successfully repelled all attacks by Ukrainian troops using air and artillery strikes. Now this is Liman area. Let's go to the Ukrainians, which is on the Liman front. The Russians conducted airstrikes in the areas of Bam Bam Bim Bam Bam Boom in Luhansk Oblast. About 15 settlements came under artillery fire. Now we go to Bakhmut, but I'm going to read what the Russians say about Liman, which is right here in this area. Russian forces struck Ukrainian troops. 3 Ukrainian drones were downed here. Russian forces struck Ukrainian troops. 6 drones were downed here. The number increases, used to be like 1 or 2 maximum. And here, Battle Group Center successfully repelled 2 attacks by Ukrainian troops using assault and armed aviation. Here, Russian forces struck Ukrainian troops, and here, Russian air defenses shot down a Ukrainian Sukhoi 25 aircraft. These are just shells conducted by the Ukrainians. I will not read them because we have to go first to Bakhmut. This is Bakhmut that I read actually. And here in the Bakhmut front, the occupiers, which is the Russians, conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the areas of Klishkivka, Donetsk Oblast. They launched an airstrike near Vesele, Donetsk Oblast. More than 20 settlements came under artillery shelling in the Donetsk Oblast. We're going to go a little bit south of Bakhmut, which is Avdiivka front. The settlements of Pam Pam Pim Pam Pum Pum were shelled with artillery. So the Russians are just shelling, supposedly, this area with Avdiivka right here. Let's see what the Russians say happened in Avdiivka. Battles are raging in the city. And we're going to go, let's say this one, Donetsk. Ukrainian forces shelled the Kievsky, Kirovsky, Kuibishevsky, and Petrovsky districts. They fired 59 155mm shells at the city, including 6 cluster munitions. So, Donetsk, the city. Let's see what happens here in Marinka area, according to the Russians. Battle Group Yug successfully repelled an attack by Ukrainian troops using air and artillery strikes. In Marinka, battles are raging in a city, and this, the same thing, they're repelling. So this is battles in the city, and they just use air and artillery strikes here. So let's see what the Ukrainians are saying about Marinka. On the Marinka front, Ukrainian defense forces continue to hold back the advance of Russian troops. So now they, as they said, at the top right here, these 2, Klishkivka and Marinka, these I think are by Marinka, and this one is by Bakhmut, or this is by Bakhmut, the other one is by Marinka. Anyway, let's go back to not Kherson, to right here. Marinka front. Ukrainian defense forces continue to hold back. Okay, the occupiers conducted airstrikes in the areas of Marinka and Novomilavy-Babinka. That's the one. All right, and two more areas in Donetsk area. Oblast came under artillery fire. So, hold back the advances of Russian troops. The Russians don't say anything about it. It's just that they fight within the city. Here, let's see what happened here. Russian air defenses shot down 7 Ukrainian drones. That's a lot. And here, how many? 7, probably 7 and 7. The same thing in this area then. And let's see what happens here. This is Vuhledar and Shakhtarske region. And let's see what the Russians are saying here. A battle group Vostok hammered Ukrainian troops using air and artillery strikes. And here, the same thing. Let's see what the Ukrainians are saying about this region before we enter Zaporozhye, which supposedly is the main thrust of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. On the Shakhtarske front, the Russian forces conducted an airstrike near Staromayorsk, Donetsk Oblast, Vuhledar, and a few more other settlements in Donetsk Oblast came under artillery fire. Zaporozhye front, this is the main counteroffensive, Ukrainian counteroffensive. The occupiers conducted airstrikes in the areas of Tomachka and Robotynia in Zaporozhye Oblast. Their artillery shelling damaged more than 30 settlements. So nothing about the Ukrainians doing shit here. Do you see anything about Ukraine conducting anything? No, this is per Ukrainians. So let's see what the Russians are saying about this. It says that the Russian forces thwarted an attempt by Ukrainian troops to break through with 2 assault groups. So the Russians are saying the Ukrainians are attacking, the Ukrainians say no, the Russians are bombarding. Weird. And here it says that Russian forces supported by rocket troops, artillery, heavy flamethrower systems and aviation successfully repelled, again, 5 attacks by Ukrainian units of the 82nd Air Assault Brigade drawn from the Ukrainian Strategic Reserves. Now, 82 Air Assault Brigade supposedly is the most formidable at this point, trained and equipped by the Western countries with about 200 pieces of heavy equipment, tanks, and so on. So this is their best, the last chance, I think. After this, there's no more. You can bring the F-16s for a target practice by the Russians. And let's see what's going on here. Russian forces destroyed an ammunition depot of Ukraine 65th Mechanized Brigade. So if the Ukrainians don't break through right here with this 82nd Air Assault Brigade, then the whole offensive is dead, face down in the water, floating downstream. Okay, that's it. So let's go in here in the Kherson. Let's see what the Ukrainians are saying about Kherson. On the Kherson front, the Russians conducted airstrikes in Kherson Oblast. More than 20 settlements came under artillery shelling of the occupiers. So supposedly the Russians are shelling Kherson and the area, plus some Mykolaiv Oblast. This is right here, Mykolaiv Oblast, this area, Kherson is right here. The Russians say, we didn't do squat here. Only the Ukrainians bombarded. This is what the Russians report. Only the Ukrainians bombarded here. Let's see what happened here. Russian air defenses shot down 3 Ukrainian drones. Okay, but the Russians did not do anything, according to the Russians. Let's go like this. Is anything else anywhere else on the map? No. So let's go back to the last part of the Ukrainians update. At the same time, usually they end up with a final update summary. At the same time, the Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to conduct the offensive operations in the Melitopol front. That's where the 82nd Air Assault Brigade, the last thrust. I covered that, I think, yesterday or the day before when they said they will deploy that over there. All the numbers of, I don't know how many tanks, armored vehicles, and they're the best. 2,000 people, that's all. Consolidating their positions and carrying out counter-battery operations. Russian occupation forces continue to activate. Okay, I'm not going to read that bullshit because they, at the end, they try to master my empathy, and I don't switch it on. And I don't want you to. You got others. They're gonna maul sympathy and empathy and all that. Okay, not from here. This is it, my friends. The Russians, I think, they're conducting their successful offensive. The Ukrainians, nothing. I'm keeping an eye, this eye, the eagle eye, on the 82nd Air artillery, air force, babi boo, you know, that one. That supposedly is the best. Okay, thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.